I wonder, have you ever felt like it's all too much? Like everything is just kind of weighing you down and crashing in on you. Maybe there's so much to do, so many pressures, so many expectations, and you just can't cope. It's too overwhelming, and this just feels like the middle of crazy. I've definitely had that times in my life. I know that some of our year 11s have probably just experienced a bit of that. Maybe they're coming out the other side. But I want to encourage you because Jesus had times like that too. And there's this one situation which we're looking at today, okay, where this guy has a skin disease. The original language says he had leprosy. Leprosy is not a nice thing, okay, and he has a leprosy. He approaches Jesus and he says, "Will you heal me?" And this wasn't just a skin defect. This was more than this. In his community, it meant that he was seen as unclean, and it meant he would have been shunned. He wouldn't have been able to worship at his temple. He wouldn't have been able to be with his community. He would have to be ostracized. Okay. And then Jesus comes along and he says, "If you are willing, can you make me heal? And will you heal me?" And Jesus does. He heals him. But then Jesus says, "But don't tell anyone." Okay. And I think part of the reason that Jesus does that is because he doesn't want the word to get out and like loads of people to hear about it and it to get too crazy. But even though Jesus does say that, okay, word does get out, okay, and then everybody comes to him and they want to hear about it, they want to see him. Some people want to be healed as well. So for Jesus, this was the middle of crazy. And so, what does Jesus do when he's in the middle of this kind of huge need? Lots of people, can you heal me? Can you speak to us? I want to know more. What does Jesus do? It says this in Luke 5, verse 16: Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Because Jesus knew that he couldn't heal everyone. He couldn't preach to everyone. He was God, but he was also a man and he had limits. So he needed times where he stepped back so that he could just be in relationship with his Father. And Jesus, I think, sets a great example for us that sometimes we need to sort of step back from life and just be in that relationship with God. Not kind of once in a blue moon, but like often, regularly. Jesus often withdrew. This was something that he would do quite naturally, normally, in as a part of his everyday walking life. But for us, this is kind of uncommon, a little bit unheard of, because we want to be constantly busy. We fill every moment we have with stuff and content. We watch Netflix, we listen to podcasts, we scroll endlessly on TikTok and YouTube. And so we have no quiet time in our life anymore. We're almost afraid of silence, when we kind of like, have you ever been with a group of friends and it all goes quiet and you're like, awkward? And that's because we don't like silence. We're not comfortable with it. We feel we have to fill it with noise. And so what would happen if we quietened down the noise, if we were just alone with our thoughts? And for some of us, that's just way too scary. We don't want to do that. But actually, it's really important for your mental health, for your well-being, to be alone with your thoughts, to be able to process what is going on and be in touch with those things, not to ignore it or push it out, but to actually engage with it. And prayer adds another sort of dimension to it because when we engage in prayer, it means that we quieten down the noise and we tune in to God. And that might mean that we pour out our frustrations, our challenges, our difficulties. God, why is this happening? God, I'm really upset about this. God, this is really tough. But it's not just saying stuff to God, it's also about receiving and hearing from God too. And so I wasn't streaming last week because I was on a retreat. And actually, it was a really tricky time to go on retreat. There was a lot going on at work, a lot going on in the office, and I felt a bit guilty for kind of walking away from all that and having that time. But actually, it's really important to make space and just to be open to what God might be saying to me. And I did feel that God spoke to me on a few things. Some things I was kind of challenged on, and other things I just hadn't considered before. Um, Now, you might not have the opportunity to go on like a big retreat like that, but all of us can make space to withdraw. Withdrawing not to be a Billy No Mates, but withdrawing to process our thoughts, our feelings, withdrawing to engage in that relationship with God, pouring out to Him and receiving from Him as well. And if that's not ever something that you've ever done before, then maybe try it. Maybe just 5 or 10 minutes a day. You don't have to fill your whole day with noise. You can be alone with Him and see the difference that it can make. It might just be just a short amount of time, but get away from the crazy every now and then and be with God.